The walls of Buckingham Palace have never been this quiet, yet behind those gilded doors, an earthquake is unfolding. A royal aide, trembling and pale, leaked a chilling sentence. He has weeks, not months. In a realm obsessed with control and illusion, the king's private battle with cancer is no longer private, and far worse than the public has been led to believe. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The official statement had been delivered with surgical precision. Phrases like routine treatment, positive outlook, and respect for privacy were carefully chosen. But behind the palace gates, there was nothing routine about the atmosphere. Security staff were seen moving erratically, corridors were abruptly closed off, and Charles's once consistent schedule had become a patchwork of cancelled appearances and whispered excuses. What the public received was a softened story, polished and rehearsed, but inside, the language was different, urgent, grim, and now impossible to contain. It was a trusted senior aide, long considered part of the king's inner sanctum, who finally broke the code of silence. In an off-the-record conversation that quickly spread like wildfire through elite media circles, they uttered the words that changed everything. He has weeks, not months. That single phrase shattered the carefully built illusion that Charles was merely undergoing precautionary treatments. Suddenly, the royal household was plunged into a state of quiet crisis, as if everyone had heard a clock begin ticking but no one dared to ask how much time was left. Inside the palace, the mood had shifted. Staff movements were restricted. Medical consultants began arriving through side entrances, escorted by unmarked vehicles, their visits timed with extreme discretion. Sources whispered that some of the UK's top oncologists had been summoned multiple times in the same week. One particularly trusted physician, known to the king for years, was reportedly seen leaving Sandringham in tears. These were not the signs of a manageable illness, these were signs of impending finality. Those closest to Charles reportedly begged him to slow down months earlier, when fatigue, disorientation and sudden bouts of silence began interrupting even informal family gatherings. But Charles, ever the stoic son of a queen who worked until her final breath, refused to show weakness. He brushed aside symptoms as stress or routine aging, and by the time he acknowledged the gravity of his condition, the disease had already advanced far beyond the optimistic timeline presented to the public. Adding to the storm was a revelation few were prepared for. Charles had already recorded a series of emergency messages, including one to be aired upon his death, one source close to the palace. Tech team confirmed that a pre-recorded message had been labeled with an internal tag, Code Sovereign Shadow. Its very existence confirmed what the public didn't know: plans were being made not for recovery, but for transition. But while the palace scrambles to contain the narrative, one person is already preparing for a future none dared speak aloud. She fought for her place beside him, clawed her way through scandal, and stood firm in the face of critics. But now, Queen Camilla finds herself unraveling behind velvet curtains, not from grief alone, but from fear. Her power, her title, her place in history, all tethered to a man whose time may be slipping faster than anyone admits. When the true weight of the king's condition was revealed behind palace doors, Camilla's face reportedly fell in a way that no one in her staff had seen before. The queen consort had been briefed prior to the public announcement, but even she had been told a version far gentler than reality. What she heard in the days that followed was something else entirely, something final. Charles was not stabilizing, he was deteriorating. And the woman who had spent decades fighting for recognition suddenly felt her future dissolve with a single update from the royal physicians. Within Clarence House, the atmosphere grew suffocating. Staff described her as withdrawn, quick-tempered, and in one case, seen alone in the king's study, clutching a framed photograph and weeping. In another, she reportedly dismissed 3 aides within the same afternoon after a brief outburst. But the emotional weight wasn't just grief, it was something colder, fear. For Camilla, this wasn't just about losing her husband. It was about losing everything she had bled to achieve: acceptance, authority, and survival in a monarchy that never fully embraced her. As Charles grew weaker, so did her grip on the palace's inner workings. Instead of turning to William and Catherine, whose rising prominence threatened to eclipse her, Camilla drew tighter to a private circle of loyal confidants, many of whom had no ties to the core royal machinery. Sources say she stopped attending key strategic briefings, began hosting private dinners with select guests, and even bypassed protocol to speak directly with foreign correspondents. The rift was no longer invisible, it was strategic. Tensions with Charles's children, always a sore point, flared once more. William in particular grew cold, reportedly refusing to consult Camilla on upcoming transition logistics. "She's not the future," one insider overheard him saying. "She's a remnant of the past." For Camilla, the sting was unbearable, echoing the decades-long battle she fought to legitimize her place beside Charles. She had once been the woman in the shadows, shunned and scorned. She thought those days were over. Now they had returned in a darker, crueler form. Haunted by memories of her long road to the crown, Camilla began making moves that many interpreted as acts of desperation. She was said to have written at least 2 confidential letters to senior palace aides, requesting protocol flexibility should the king become incapacitated, letters that bypassed traditional royal legal channels. The implication was clear. Camilla feared not only Charles's death, but being shut out of the monarchy entirely if he passed before certain measures were in place. But while Camilla retreats into shadowed corridors, another royal steps into the light with intentions that could shake the monarchy to its very bones. He never wanted the crown this way. But with his father's health failing faster than forecasted, Prince William is no longer just the heir. Behind closed doors, he's already acting like king, and not everyone is pleased. His decisions are sharp, swift, and to some, merciless. As the true scale of King Charles's decline became undeniable, William's demeanor changed overnight. Gone was the watchful, contemplative prince, content to stand in the background. In his place emerged a man who understood the clock was no longer ticking forward, it was crashing downward. William began calling confidential meetings without his father's knowledge. He summoned government ministers, military advisors, and senior palace officials to private briefings that excluded Camilla and even the Queen's long-trusted aides. The era of delicate observation was over. This was now about consolidation. Quietly, with precision, William was preparing for command. What raised eyebrows first was the swift formation of a new advisory council. Behind the scenes, it had one purpose: to prepare for rapid transition. Notably absent from this circle were individuals loyal to Camilla. Long-time palace insiders who had supported the Queen consort through her most turbulent years suddenly found themselves sidelined, their access revoked, their influence dismantled. William's message was unspoken but deafening. He would not allow sentimentality to weaken the crown's future. According to palace sources, a chilling moment occurred during a closed-door discussion where William, visibly agitated, was overheard telling a senior official, "If it comes to it, I won't wait." The weight of that sentence sent shockwaves across the palace. It was more than frustration, it was intent. For the first time in modern royal history, the heir was openly considering bypassing tradition if the monarch could no longer fulfill his role. And with Charles reportedly slipping in and out of consciousness on certain days, William wasn't speaking in hypotheticals. The reaction from within the old guard was immediate and hostile. Traditionalists accused William of overreach, of displaying a ruthlessness unbecoming of a future king. The Queen's private secretary, fiercely loyal to Charles and Camilla, allegedly intercepted a document drafted by William's team outlining emergency powers. The document, labelled Crown Contingency Directive, sparked outrage among senior courtiers and was quickly buried. But the very fact it existed spoke volumes. William wasn't waiting for permission. He was seizing responsibility. And then came the most unsettling rumor of all, quiet whispers suggesting a Regency Act was being revised in secret. If enacted, it would allow William to assume full royal duties immediately, with or without Charles's formal abdication. Such an act would plunge the monarchy into uncharted constitutional waters, but William, now surrounded by legal minds and political strategists, seemed willing to entertain even the most drastic paths forward. The kingdom needed strength, not delay. But William's quiet coup is only half the story. The other half is the woman by his side, who may soon become the most powerful figure in the Commonwealth. In public, she smiles. In private, she prepares. Catherine, Princess of Wales, has spent years mastering silence. But now, she is assembling a court of her own, one not sanctioned by decree but by destiny. As Charles fades and William steps forward, Catherine becomes something no one foresaw: the stabilizer, the strategist, the shadow queen. While William consolidates authority, it is Catherine who ensures the crown's image remains unshaken. Far from the ceremonial duties the public once associated with her, she has quietly begun attending private meetings with senior palace legal advisors, sessions not just about the king's condition, but about the constitutional mechanics of succession. Her questions are pointed, her presence calm yet commanding. Those in the room say she never raises her voice, but when she speaks, no one interrupts. It's a subtle but unmistakable signal. She is preparing for power. Equally telling is her grip on the palace's public narrative. The royal communications team, once split loyally between Charles and William, now leans unmistakably toward Catherine. Statements are vetted through her. Media interactions are redirected, and even the palace's digital platforms have adopted a new tone: polished, controlled, and quietly forward-looking. Insiders whisper that the Queen's messaging team has grown uneasy, sensing their influence waning under Catherine's shadow. Her appearance, too, has shifted. No longer merely elegant, it has become deliberate. Fewer vibrant prints, more regal silhouettes. Longer moments of stillness during public appearances, calculated pauses in her responses. The subtlety is intentional. These aren't choices made by a princess, they are moves made by someone who understands that the world is already watching her as something more. Her style is not evolving by accident, it's a coronation unfolding in slow motion. But what startled insiders the most was a private moment not meant to be heard, a fragment of conversation captured near a Windsor drawing room between Catherine and Princess Anne. Anne, long regarded as the monarchy's steely enforcer, was overheard saying, "You'll need to be ready sooner than expected." Catherine's response, quiet, but unwavering, was chilling in its certainty: "I already am." That admission confirmed what many had only speculated: she's not waiting for permission, she's preparing for inevitability. Public sentiment has already begun to shift, as Catherine is seen more often with her children, making unannounced visits to community centres and walking solemnly into Sunday services. The people sense something different. It's no longer about duty, it's about leadership. Support for her has surged, especially as Camilla has faded from view and Charles's presence has become fleeting. Social media platforms buzz with clips of her silent gestures, interpreting them as symbols of endurance, strength, and quiet power. Perhaps the most haunting sign came from a late-night visit to Windsor's private chapel. No press, no aides, just Catherine. It was meant to be private, but a passing staff member revealed she stayed alone for over an hour. What was said, or prayed for, remains a mystery. But shortly afterward, a ceremonial draft for an upcoming royal observance was leaked, and in it, her name was listed with a quiet but thunderous word beside it: designate. But while the modern faces of the monarchy gather strength, the old guard begins to fracture, and not all cracks are silent. They were never truly united, but now the facade is cracking. Charles's final days have resurrected rivalries once buried deep in protocol. Anne, Edward, even Andrew, each holding onto fragments of influence, while the Futu Re is being scripted without them. The royal family isn't grieving, they're negotiating. Princess Anne had always been known as the monarchy's iron backbone, loyal, disciplined, unshakably private. But when she learned just how long she'd been kept in the dark about her brother's true condition, her fury boiled over. Sources say she stormed out of a senior staff briefing after discovering that critical updates on Charles's health had been withheld from her, and deliberately so. Her trust shattered, Anne now walks the palace halls with suspicion, demanding transparency that no one seems willing to provide. It isn't just a matter of grief, it's betrayal. And for someone who has served the crown without ego, being cast aside in its most pivotal moment has cut deeper than any public slight. Meanwhile, Prince Edward has taken a different approach, measured, but no less desperate. In a letter reportedly hand-delivered to William's staff, Edward requested the formation of a formal family council. A space, he said, where each senior royal could have a voice in the transition that was clearly underway. But the request was denied without explanation. The message from William's camp was clear: decisions were being made at a higher level, and the old rules no longer applied. Edward, long regarded as the quiet peacemaker, now finds himself powerless in a storm that refuses diplomacy. Then came the shock of Andrew's reappearance. After years of being publicly cast out, stripped of titles and roles, the disgraced Duke of York was seen entering the palace through a side entrance. The reason? Sources say Andrew is pushing to be included in discussions around Charles' private estate, his personal wealth, assets and legacy materials. It's a move that has disgusted some family members, particularly William and Anne, who view his return not as reconciliation, but opportunism. Old tensions have reignited with venomous precision. One insider described a family meeting in which voices were raised, fingers pointed, and the past weaponized. No topic was off limits: titles, favoritism, loyalty, scandal. Everything was back on the table. The most explosive confrontation, however, erupted between Anne and Camilla. The Queen Consort, already sidelined in key matters, allegedly attempted to block Anne from visiting Charles during one of his most vulnerable nights. Anne, furious, forced her way past the Queen's guards and delivered a message loud enough for staff to hear: "You're not the gatekeeper of this family." The incident has been buried from public view, but insiders believe it marks the final collapse of any remaining civility between the two women. Further tensions spread after an internal memo meant for a handful of top aides was leaked. Titled Operation Guardian, it detailed a contingency plan for rapid succession and internal power delegation. But the language raised alarms. It emphasized streamlining traditional voices and minimizing internal dissent. In other words, silencing senior royals not aligned with the current plan. For some, especially Anne and Edward, the document was a death knell for unity. For others, it was confirmation that the monarchy was entering a new age, one where loyalty didn't guarantee a seat at the table. And in the shadow of all this chaos, whispers have begun. That one royal, unnamed in official circles but heavily speculated, may be preparing to step down entirely, unwilling to be part of what they now see as a broken institution. If true, it would mark the first resignation of its kind in modern history. But who that royal is and what their exit would mean remains the question no one dares answer out loud. And as the family turns on itself, the public begins to sense something is terribly wrong. The mood across the United Kingdom has changed. Mourning hasn't begun, but unease has. Royalists whisper, the press grows bolder, and beneath it all, the people begin to ask the question no palace statement dares answer. Is the king already gone in spirit, if not yet in body? As days turn into weeks without a single live appearance from King Charles, speculation has begun to swirl like a storm without a center. The official line remains unchanged: private treatment, rest, appreciation for the nation's support. But for a monarchy built on visibility and ritual, this prolonged silence is anything but ordinary. The public may not know the exact truth, but they feel its weight pressing down on every empty balcony, every closed curtain, every event where Charles should have stood and didn't. Mainstream media has walked a tightrope, bound by strict legal boundaries when it comes to speculating on royal health. But behind the scenes, pressure is mounting. Anonymous sources have begun feeding tabloids and online outlets with whispers of increasing fragility, urgent consultations, and rapidly shifting plans. Even veteran correspondents, those who have covered the royal beat for decades, have started speaking in hushed tones of concern, calling the king's condition unstable and more serious than reported. And then came the leaks, untraceable but undeniable. Individuals tied loosely to NHS specialists hinted at a situation spiraling far faster than even insiders had feared. If these claims are true, the palace isn't simply withholding updates. It's orchestrating a full-scale containment. The sentiment on the streets is no longer mere curiosity. It's sorrow, it's doubt, it's frustration. Interviews with citizens outside Windsor and Buckingham Palace reveal more than just sympathy, they reveal fear, especially among the older generation, who see in Charles not just a monarch, but the last living link to an era already fading. "He waited his whole life for this," one elderly woman said through. Ugh, tears. "And now we're losing him before he ever truly reigned." BR across the globe, ripple effects have begun. Several Commonwealth nations have quietly opened discussions about what a post-Charles monarchy would look like. Some are calling for independence referendums, others are re-evaluating ceremonial roles tied to the crown. The king's presence, once assumed, has now become a variable, and the international political machine is already adjusting to that new uncertainty. Meanwhile, social media has erupted. Hashtags like "Pray for Charles," "Queen Catherine Now," and "End of an Era" have surged to the top of trending lists. TikTok theories, Instagram reels analyzing every pause in a royal video, and Twitter threads dissecting the Queen consort's absence have taken over the digital space. The emotional pulse of the public is no longer just compassion, it's desperation for clarity. And in that desperation, a strange kind of preemptive mourning has begun. But perhaps the most unsettling hint of all came not from the palace, but from a journalist known for her surgical precision in royal reporting. In a cryptic late-night post, she wrote, "Sources confirm, black dress rehearsal complete." It was just 5 words, but in royal protocol, a black dress rehearsal signals something terrifyingly close, an imminent death announcement. And if true, then the public is not waiting for news of a decline, they are waiting for confirmation of the end. But while the nation trembles, one final twizz. Tea is already in motion, hidden in an envelope, sealed by the king's own hand. He knew this moment would come. Before the cameras, before the chaos, before the collapse, King Charles penned a letter meant only to be opened when the end was near. That letter has surfaced, and its contents are unlike anything the royal family expected or wanted. It arrived without ceremony, delivered by the Lord Chamberlain directly into Prince William's hands. Sealed in wax bearing the royal crest, the envelope was unassuming in appearance but nuclear in impact. Inside it lay the king's final written message, not to the nation, not to his son, but to history. In those carefully chosen words, Charles offered not a political directive, nor a personal farewell, but a recalibration of legacy. And what shook the palace to its core was the name at the center of it all. Not Camilla, not even William, but Catherine. The letter, according to one insider, opened with a quiet admission. Charles expressed a deep admiration for Catherine's unshakable sense of duty, calling her the steady hand our bloodline desperately needs. He went further, declaring her a natural leader born not of crown, but of character. The tone was reverent, intimate, almost confessional. Charles, in those closing lines, seemed to be acknowledging something he never said aloud in life, that she, not he, embodied the future the monarchy needed. And in doing so, he may have redrawn the royal map altogether. More haunting still, as a line buried halfway through the letter, a moment of introspection that some believe reveals the depth of his inner turmoil. "I inherited a crown, she earns it." With those 6 words, Charles exposed a quiet guilt, a sense that his reign was not a legacy achieved, but a responsibility reluctantly passed. It was as though he had finally accepted what critics and allies alike had long whispered, that while Charles spent his life preparing for the throne, Catherine was quietly becoming the true face of monarchy. But the true bombshell lay at the end, a single sentence that royal aides are still debating. Written in the king's own hand, postscripted below the signature, were the words, "Protect the realm from within." No one has publicly interpreted its meaning, but the timing has fueled endless speculation. Some see it as a warning about internal sabotage. Others believe it's a nod to recent fractures within the family, an urgent plea to guard the institution from being consumed by those closest to it. When Camilla reportedly learned of the letter's contents, she erupted in rage. According to a source inside Clarence House, she was not only blindsided, but humiliated. The fact that her name was absent, and that Catherine was elevated in such dramatic language, was a wound too deep to hide. She has since withdrawn from most transition meetings, and notably refused to comment when asked privately whether she had known the letter even existed. Her silence, some say, speaks louder than any denial. And yet, the full implications of Charles's final message remain veiled. The letter has not been released to the public. Only a few senior officials have read it in its entirety. But what is clear is this: its ripple effect has already begun reshaping internal succession conversations. Legal advisors have been summoned. Precedents are being re-examined. The hierarchy is no longer stable. It's being rewritten from the grave. And yet, just as the crown's future seemed to find clarity, a storm from the past roars back into the present, threatening everything. They were out, exiled, dismissed as rebels. But with Charles's health in freefall and the monarchy in chaos, the Sussexes see an opening. Harry returns with questions and Meghan with demands. What they ask for could upend the fragile new order before it even begins. Harry's return was quiet. No flashing lights, no red carpet, no grand welcome. But silence doesn't equal insignificance. He slipped into London under the guise of reconciliation, but few believed it was purely about healing. The timing was too calculated, the stakes too high. Charles was reportedly unconscious for parts of the day. Power was shifting, loyalties were breaking, and in that vacuum, the once estranged Duke of Sussex stepped back into the shadows of the very institution that had pushed him out. And from the moment his boots touched British soil, the tension was immediate. William refused to grant a private audience. The request sent through a trusted intermediary was met with a flat denial. Now isn't the time, was the official reason. But those close to William say the real message was far colder. Too late. And then came Meghan across the Atlantic, but louder than ever. Within days, her legal team submitted a formal inquiry through diplomatic channels, requesting clarity on Archie and Lilibet's royal status should succession shift. The language was firm, couched in legalese, but the implications were unmistakable. Meghan was demanding recognition for her children in a monarchy that once denied them titles. This wasn't a reunion, it was a chess move. The palace scrambled to respond, unsure whether to ignore, delay, or retaliate. What happened next poured gasoline on already burning tensions. Queen Camilla, long known for veiled remarks, was reportedly overheard during a private lunch muttering the words, "They smell blood." Whether meant as accusation or observation, it spread like wildfire through palace corridors. The implication was brutal, that Harry and Meghan were not mourning, they were maneuvering. And in a house as fragile as this, perception was everything. But perhaps the most unnerving presence in the Sussex standoff was Catherine. Once close to Harry, now distant and deliberate, her handling of the entire affair was said to be surgical. She refused emotional engagement, instructed staff to respond only through official channels, and kept her public face serene. Behind the walls of Windsor, her strategy was clear: containment. She would not allow Meghan's demands to destabilize the fragile ascent of her family. Every move was measured, every silence weaponized. In contrast to the passion of Harry and Meghan, Catherine's cold precision sent a different message. This throne is not yours to reclaim. The public, meanwhile, was split. Some welcomed Harry's return, still holding on to the fairy tale of the once unbreakable bond between brothers. Others saw opportunism, a calculated invasion at a time of national heartbreak. Online debates turned vicious. Editorials clashed. The nation, already exhausted, was being asked to pick a side in a war no one wanted but everyone knew was inevitable. And looming above it all was the next bombshell no one could stop. Insiders confirmed that Harry's publishing team had begun teasing a sequel memoir, one allegedly containing details of Charles's final weeks, including private family conversations, medical briefings, and an alleged confrontation that could redefine public perception of the monarchy forever. The very idea of it sent shockwaves through palace strategy meetings. If the book is released during the transition, it could ignite a crisis that no press office could bury. But while the Sussexes strategize and the Windsors fracture, the final heartbeat of this story lies with one man whose silence is louder than any scream. The corridors of Sandringham are still. The king's favourite place now a waiting room for destiny. Monitors beep, candles flicker. And in the room next to his, a new monarch prepares, not to celebrate but to endure. These are the final hours of Charles III, and nothing will ever be the same again. When it became clear that no treatment would reverse the course of his illness, King Charles asked to be taken to Sandringham, not for retreat, but for resolution. It was a request no one questioned. For decades, this estate had offered him peace away from the demands of ceremony and statecraft. But now, it served a new purpose, a private passage to the inevitable. The final treatments had failed. His strength, already diminished, waned faster with each passing hour. And behind the walls of that estate, the monarchy entered its most delicate transition in modern history, not with coronets and carriages, but with hushed voices and unspoken dread. In those final moments, the king asked to see three people, each conversation carrying a weight only history could fully measure. With William, the mood was solemn, precise, father to son, sovereign to heir. There were no lingering illusions between them. Charles reminded William of the burden he was about to inherit. He offered not guidance but a warning: "It will not forgive you if you hesitate." With Catherine, it was different. He took her hand, reportedly held it longer than expected, and whispered words no aide could fully decipher. But one line was confirmed by someone within earshot: "You were always the quiet force." It was a farewell not just to a daughter-in-law, but to a future monarch in spirit, if not yet in law. With Camilla, the energy was fractured, emotional. She pleaded for more time, but Charles, exhausted and distant, asked to rest. When she returned later, she found herself barred from the room by his personal physician on the king's orders. By nightfall, a priest had been summoned. Not for a public ritual, but for a private rite, a final moment of clarity, humility, and surrender. The significance was unmistakable. This was the king's final anointing, away from the glare of state, witnessed only by God and those he trusted most. And then came the unraveling. Camilla, denied entry during that sacred hour, collapsed in the hallway, overwhelmed by rage, grief, and disbelief. Her cries echoed down corridors that had once welcomed her with royal reverence. Now, they carried only silence in return. As the hour drew near, William stepped into his role not with ceremony, but with necessity. He signed his first emergency directive as de facto monarch, authorizing temporary authority over matters of state. The ink was still drying when a box of personal journals, King Charles' handwritten legacy, was handed not to his son, but to Catherine. It was Charles's final instruction. Only she, he had insisted, would understand how to preserve them. The symbolism was undeniable. In that gesture, he crowned her the steward of his soul. And in the final moments, as the air thinned and the lights dimmed, Charles stirred one last time. He did not ask for his crown. He did not call for his sons. Instead, he murmured a single name, a name none of the witnesses were prepared to hear, a name tied to a different time, a different pain, a different truth. The room froze. No one spoke. Because in that whisper, the king had revealed a secret he had taken pains to bury, a secret now etched into the monarchy's final chapter. And so, as the crown passes under cover of dusk, the world will awaken to a kingdom forever changed. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.